Chapter 51. Link Red bikes to the Vermilion Gym with his Metapod in the basket. Its emerald body gleams in the sun as its half-lidded eyes stare at the shifting world around them, occasionally moving to track his Bellsprout as its sinuous body climbs around it through the gaps in the plastic, shifting to keep its leaves in the sun as he turns through the city streets. His legs pump faster as he sees a stretch of empty sidewalk ahead, and he stands on the pedals for a moment, enjoying the morning breeze against his face. It's a week after he met with Sabrina, and his days have become filled with attending gym classes and testing battle strategies against other trainers. With the cruise convention just a few days away, however, it's time to finally check attend electric Pokemon class off his list. Of all the things he's going to miss about the city, the most unexpected one by far is its gym. Despite originally going mostly to Humor Blue, after his second visit with Leaf, he ended up staying long after she left, attending more classes and signing up for another battle to test his command code. He felt out of place at first, among the group that Blue and Aiko had gathered. But the others were so friendly, and the gym staff so knowledgeable and supportive, that he quickly began to enjoy himself. There's an atmosphere of camaraderie that he didn't expect, a very real sense of belonging that comes with being surrounded by people, dedicating themselves to the same goals, and helping each other along the way. He tried focusing on his psychic training the following day, but it was difficult and emotionally taxing enough that progress was slow, and the entire time he was distracted by thoughts of what he learned at the gym the day before. After lunch, he talked himself into going back for a quick break of a class or two that ended up lasting the rest of the day, and then trainer battles into the night, which he justified by remembering his promise to help Charmander evolve. By the time he returned to the trainer house that night, he already had plans to return as soon as his Pokemon recovered. And that's exactly what he did the next morning, writing some quick thoughts down as he sat in the Pokemon Center waiting room before dashing off to meet up with the others again. He never realized how much the gym classes had to teach beyond just Pokemon battling. But that's not his only reason for going day after day. He always looks forward to the next one. But in truth, it's the Pokemon battles that have been dominating the majority of his shower and biking thoughts. It started from just wanting to try out his ideas on efficient command use, but once he started seeing each match as a puzzle that he had to be smart and creative and quick enough to solve, the allure of facing new opponents and optimizing his strategies became addictive. Red even watched a trainer battle online, which he never expected he'd do of his own free will. He found himself curious after the professor's story about Sabrina, however, and decided to find the video of the match. Even knowing the outcome ahead of time, it had Red on the edge of his seat. Leader Koichi didn't bother with any of the showmanship or lessons that Brock or Misty engaged in with Blue. He spoke nothing but commands, his Pokemon attacking without restraint. But Sabrina and her Pokemon were always one step ahead, driving Koichi to greater and greater extremes. Great chunks of the arena began to crack and split as Koichi's final Pokemon, a gargantuan Machamp that was almost 9 feet tall, struck the ground in what would likely be killing blows if any of them connected with Sabrina's Alakazam. She must be reading the Machamp's intentions before it attacks, Red thought, as Sabrina simply kept dodging until the Machamp collapsed to its knees, unable to withstand the invisible psychic assault from her Pokemon. But she can't be joined fully with her Pokemon at the same time, can she? It must be trained well enough to pick up what to do from what she senses. Unless, of course, she simply joined with her Alakazam, as it reads the Machamp's thoughts while attacking. But to split her attention that many ways and still be able to think straight, let alone well enough to battle, is ridiculous. Red can still barely distinguish his Abra's physical sensations from his own. The video was both humbling and inspirational. It's why Red has been incorporating his psychic powers into his training sessions, as a way to add some psychic practice into his days, so he can try using them in combat again. He hasn't done so since his battle with Blue and Cerulean, but he's developed his abilities a lot since then, and his strategy for tonight's battle will rely on him maintaining a connection throughout the battle. Red reaches the gym and dismounts, then places his Pokemon carefully on the sidewalk and withdraws his bike and its gear. He also withdraws his Bellsprout, but keeps the Metapod out so he can lift it into a new sling he bought for his bag. It's hard to read the Metapod's emotional state even if he's using his powers, but it settles into the sling, without fuss, as Red lifts his bag onto his shoulders and carries his Pokémon through the lobby and toward the locker rooms so he can change into the gym clothes. Since the Pokémon is so bad at battling, its best bet for evolution is to just spend as much time out of its ball as possible so it can finish its metamorphosis. Once he's clad in khaki and olive, he heads onto the open field and breaks into a jog toward the building the class is located in. Red's head doesn't turn on its own to watch the various classes and activities going on around him anymore, but he does occasionally spot someone from the group and exchanges waves with them if they're not busy. Red feels a surge of satisfaction as he reaches the electric training building without being out of breath, pleased that the extra weight of his Metapod hasn't tired him. Unlike his time in Pewter and Cerulean, he's been staying much more physically active, and it's paying off. Red feels a brief surge of disorientation as he walks through the door, similar to the feeling of teleporting with his Abra. One moment he's in an open field, with an implicit understanding that the buildings around him will each have the same basic utilitarian aesthetic as the rest of the gym. The next, he finds himself in a very high-tech facility, everything from the light sources to the floor made out of unusual material. He makes his way to the class he's attending and finds a large room with wide stalls to each side of a central walkway. The floor of the stalls looks strange, but Red recognizes the thermoplastic polymers and Teflon covering almost everything else. About a dozen other trainers are already inside, most milling around the front of some of the stalls, so Red picks an empty one to place his bag beside. He looks inside and finds a range of strange objects around the target dummy in the center. A tree branch is protruding out one of the walls, and a rod of some metal is sticking out of the ground near the dummy, as well as a few boulders of varying sizes. Red looks around. No one else is exploring their stall, and he hopes that doesn't mean they're not supposed to. He unslings his Metapod and puts it beside his bag, feeds it some berries, then walks in to look around. There's just enough room for himself and a Pokémon to circle the Pokédoll at the center, in this case a Machoke, with its arms outstretched and its mouth open in a yell. Red wonders what the point of the various objects are and takes the Ultra Ball from his belt. Go, Pichu! The electric mouse materializes and looks around in confusion, nose wiggling. He registers the Machoke as a potential threat, but Red claps twice, and Pichu relaxes. He turns to Red and immediately bounds over to climb up his pant leg and onto his shoulder. Red laughs and nudges him down his arm, then flings him up in the air. The mouse tumbles and lands on its paws, then runs back toward Red to do it again, squeaking excitedly all the while. After a few iterations of this, Red is ready to tell his Pokémon to attack the Pokédoll, but realizes some of the other trainers are gathered at the front of his section to look in at them. He let Pichu rest on his arm rather than flinging him up again, walking back into the main aisle with a slight blush. "Aren't you worried it'll get hurt?" one of them asks as he approaches. "Nah, I've already looked up safe heights for him to fall from. He and my Charmander both like jumping, so I've been letting them compete for treats to see who can go higher." "Oh, why?" one of the other trainers answers before he can. "Because it's easier for the Pikachu family to fire stronger attacks downward than laterally or upward." The girl notices everyone's attention on her now and adjusts her glasses. I'm guessing that was why." Red smiles and shifts his shoulders as Pichu runs along them behind his neck. "Yeah, I figure the more he gets used to jumping and leaping from tall objects, the easier it will be for him to use height in attacks." "What about Shinx?" one of the other students asks. "Do they work that way too? Or Magnemite? Or—" The other trainers are all talking at once, and the girl and Red try to answer questions as best they can. The rest of the trainers in the room gravitate toward them to listen and occasionally ask their own questions. "I heard absolute height matters too," one says, like they get more charge if they're higher up. "I don't think that's right," the girl says. "But maybe it depends on the Pokémon." "You might be thinking of specific moves," Red interjects. "Summoning an actual bolt of lightning with the thunder attack is easier at higher elevations, so maybe other electric attacks occur quicker too." "Oh. Is it true the Pokémon's size influences how much electric power it can produce?" someone else asks. Red blinks. I'm not sure actually, I never heard of—" "It can affect the amount of current they produce," the girl cuts in. "But voltage is just as important for power, and different Pokémon generate different amounts of voltage. so some benefit more or less from being bigger. You can check how much in your dexes. This prompts most of the students to start taking out their Pokédexes and looking the information up, and the others to argue among themselves. Red and the girl both exhale as all the attention shifts off them, and after a moment he notices her glancing at him. When he turns to her, she has her hand out. "Hi, I'm Lizzie." He shakes it. "Red." "Oh." She adjusts her glasses as she sizes him up. "No wonder you look familiar. I thought you'd be taller." Red blinks. "Taller? Did you get your researcher license yet from the Abra study?" "A week ago. You've read it?" "Just the abstract so far. It's on my list." Red hears the capital L in her matter-of-fact voice. "I'm terribly jealous, you know. I'm hoping to get my researcher license too." "That's awesome. What are you working on?" "Power generation by electric Pokemon. That's why I'm here." She narrows her eyes suddenly, gaze speculative. "Oh, don't worry," Red quickly says, hand going up to stroke Pichu. "I'm just here to train my Pokemon and learn more." "Well, that's a relief. So what are you working on next?" Red is in the middle of explaining his psychic practice sessions when the instructor comes in, an older man with a full mustache and beard, and a scar under his right eye. If it wasn't for his clothes, which mirror the rest of the gym members' outfits, Red would peg him as an old-fashioned pirate stereotype. And as soon as he thinks it, Red can't help but imagine him at the prow of a boat, eye patch over his scarred eye, and a chateau on his shoulder. "File in, everyone," he says as he takes a poster board and easel from the side of the room and sets it up. His voice rough from a life, Red assumes, of yelling orders at his crew. Pokemon away unless they can stay quiet and still. Red looks at his Pokemon as some of the other trainers withdraw theirs. Metapod will be fine, but Pichu might get impatient. Red snaps his finger at Pichu and holds his hand out so the mouse can leap back up and climb to his shoulder, then extends his mind to his Pokemons and breathes deep, arranging his thoughts into a relaxed pattern that quickly calms his Pokemon down. Pichu doesn't fit in Red's collar anymore, but he's able to snuggle up to his neck from the side and doze on his shoulder as he lines up with the rest of the class. "Name is Otto, and I'm here to give you the basics on electric types, both for safety and combat. If you don't have an electric Pokemon with you, you're wasting your time here, because the lecture part's nothing if you can't participate in the practical training. With that in mind, anyone want to leave and come back another time?" He waits a moment, but no one steps out of line. Good. Training and battling with electric Pokemon isn't like doing so with any other types. Rock Pokemon get to just fling stones around. Water Pokemon point and shoot. Even fire Pokemon are pretty straightforward, as long as you're aware of what in the environment is combustible. But electric Pokemon are tapping into a much more unpredictable force. To utilize them to their full potential, you have to learn at least the basics of how that force operates. A force that can kill you if you do not understand it properly. He looks from one trainer to the next, meeting their gaze for a moment, until he's sure he has everyone's attention. "So, you all know how static electricity works, yes? Anyone want to explain it simply?" Red notices some eyes turning to him, and raises his hand, but Lizzie had hers up first. "The ground is naturally negatively charged," she says. "And if you build up some positive charge by rubbing against the right things, you create potential energy. The spark you feel when you touch some piece of metal that's grounded, meaning it provides a pathway for the charge to reach the ground, is the equalization of that energy." "Good. Everyone understand that?" The instructor holds up two hands, one palm open, the other as a fist. Anytime you get negative charge and positive charge near each other, the electrons making up the negative charge want to get across to balance things out. That flow of electrons is electricity, and the space between them can channel it. He smacks his fist into his palm. Lightning works on the same principle. The bigger the difference in charge, the more powerful the spark. He takes a black marker out and begins to draw a large cloud, then a horizontal line. He uses a blue marker to draw a bunch of negative signs under the earth. When a thunderstorm forms, the clouds begin to get both negative and positively charged areas. He draws more negative signs near the bottom of the cloud, and then uses a red marker to draw pluses in the top portion of the cloud. There are actually layers of both within big thunderclouds, But the important point is that the majority of lightning you see is electricity being discharged from one part of a cloud to another, or between differently charged parts of the air. He draws yellow lines between the positive and negative charges in the cloud. But he brings the red marker down to draw a bunch of pluses on the ground beneath the cloud. The concentration of negative charge at the bottom of a cloud also positively charges the ground beneath it. Downward leaders ionize the air as they begin to branch out beneath the cloud, too fast for our eyes to see. And when they meet upward leaders, often from whatever's tallest in the area, they overcome the resistance of the air between them in an explosive discharge. He draws another jagged lightning bolt between the cloud and ground. Rarely, a positive lightning bolt will arc from the higher parts of the clouds, off toward the negatively charged ground far from the base of the storm. He draws a long lightning bolt diagonally across the page from the top of the cloud to the ground. These bolts are very rare, but much stronger. He turns back to them. Your Pokemon's electricity, he says, and knocks his knuckle against the cloud, follows this same principle. Each of them do it differently, but the first step is that they're capable of building positive and negative charges. The second is they're able to shift the charge of whatever their target is, thus creating that pathway for the energy difference to stabilize. In a bolt of electric energy. He lowers his hand and examines the class. Why is that important? Red thinks of the way he and Leaf use the lightning rods to redirect the electricity of the Pikachu in the forest, and raises his hand. It still acts as electricity, so it's still seeking the path of least resistance toward the nearest opposite charge. Right, but not the whole story. They actually have even more control than that. The third step is that they make an ionically charged path of sorts in the air, increasing accuracy and adjusting the power of their attacks. It's not perfect, however, and can still be interrupted, which means you all need to start studying different materials' conductivity, so that at the very least, you're never taken by surprise by something in your environment drawing away your Pokemon's attacks before they can reach their target, like some amateur who doesn't understand how they might be stupider than their Pokemon's instincts. Otto snorts. You mean the Pokemon know how electricity works? One of the other students asks. Do they know? By which you mean, do they understand about electrons and resistance and how exactly a bolt of electricity will travel? Their instructor asks. I have no idea. Perhaps they do in some way. Or perhaps they can see the forces fundamental to the world more clearly than us, or feel them. And so it's as easy to navigate as walking a path in a garden is to us. Whatever the case, they're far less likely to screw it up than their ignorant trainers are. Red is thinking again of the way the Chew were stymied by the rods in the forest, for a while at least, and is about to speak up in hesitant challenge to the idea, but Otto continues before he can. Of course, that's not to say they're perfect. I've seen wild Pokemon make mistakes that an informed trainer wouldn't. But I can also tell you, I've never seen a Pokemon stand too close to whatever they were attacking, and end up shocking themselves through the ground, and I have seen countless trainers who should have known better command their electric Pokemon to attack something too close, or without a clear path. Remember, your Pokemon are conditioned to obey, even if their instincts are better than yours. If you want to master the electric type, you need to immerse yourself in knowledge until it ascends to an instinctual level as well, until you can avoid the amateur trainer's mistakes, and the wild Pokemon's too, even spotting opportunities they would not. Otto waits for any questions, then gives a stiff nod and caps the marker in his hand. So everyone pick a dummy and bring your Pokemon out. There are various objects and protrusions in each one, and you're going to learn about the ones in yours. Figure out the effect it will have on your Pokemon's attacks, and then everyone is going to rotate to the next one over. Red takes up position at the lane where his Metapod is, and withdraws it, so it's not in the way of the next person who takes the lane. Who, it turns out, will be Lizzie. The girl steps up to the aisle beside him and summons a Fluffy. The pink sheep bounces around in glee before its trainer can get it to focus, and Otto speaks out a moment later. Everyone, pull out your phones and go to the gym site, then find the page listing materials by conductivity. Then command your Pokemon to use a basic ranged attack against the Pokédoll in front of you. Your lanes are filled with either conducting materials or insulated ones. Raise your hand to signal when you can get your Pokemon to strike the doll. Begin whenever. Red gives Pichu a brisk rub to rouse him, and is about to clap once to signal battle readiness, then decides to use his powers once again to project a sense of battle readiness, focusing on the Pokédoll as a threat. Pichu goes rigid after a moment, then leaps down and stands between Red and the doll, letting out a squeak of challenge as his cheeks begin to glow. Red smiles, then starts giving commands along with the other trainers. The snaps and crackles of electricity fill the room as each Pokémon tries and often fails to hit their targets, being diverted by one of the objects in the way. What immediately interests Red is the floor. It lights up around the object struck by Pichu's electricity, signaling, he assumes, the danger zones of where the current is flowing once grounded. He begins to move around the room with Pichu and try attacking from different angles, noting the changes in the electricity's behavior. Otto goes around explaining the mistakes from one circumstance to another, and eventually everyone manages to get it right, only to shift to the next stall and try again with the knowledge of what worked and the new array of obstacles. By the third room, Red can tell Pichu is getting tired and lets him rest for a bit as he feeds him one of the Lepa berries that Red recently bought. They're not as effective or fast-acting as the concentrated ether made from them, but also not nearly as expensive. It takes a few minutes before Pichu is back to his energetic self, and Red uses that time to think through what he's learned so far. Some metals in the environment are so good at conducting electricity that they'll catch any electricity sent by them, while other materials will only do it sporadically. Red soon finds himself treating insulated objects like wood, rubber, and plastic as if they're not there, but this comes back to bite him on a couple of occasions. Red starts to recognize that objects touching each other can also affect whether a material develops a positive or negative charge. Friction, contact, and induction, Otto eventually calls out. These are the methods by which an object's charge will change. Remember, like charges repel. If your Pokémon generates a negative charge, it will positively charge the surfaces of objects nearby it, moving their electrons to their other side. If the object is then grounded briefly, some of the electrons will flow out of it, leaving it positively charged as a whole once ungrounded. In a battlefield where things are moving, these rules need to be second nature to you. Red tries to keep this in mind as he moves to the next chamber, but it's hard to juggle all the different ideas, and he finally decides to try and see what Pichu thinks of the challenge. It takes a moment to enmesh his mind with his Pokémons and keep it in a purely receptive state. But once he does, he gets used to just feeling the mouse's instincts as it faces the Pokédoll and readies itself for battle. For a minute, all Red can feel is his Pokémon's body, its racing heart, its trembling legs, the adrenaline pumping through it. He's competent now at distinguishing these sensations from his own, even the much stronger sounds that echo in Pichu's ears, the sharp scents that threaten to overwhelm him if he's not careful to track them separately. As he practiced in his training sessions, he begins to focus more on the felt senses of his Pokémon, rather than the purely physical ones. The heat in Pichu's throat, the intangible sense of tension along his spine, and tries to match them to emotions Red can understand, as he starts to give commands, starts to move around the Pokédoll and see how Pichu's sensations shift. He's still reaching for some insight when Otto calls out to them to switch again, and it takes another minute to get back into the same level of sync. It isn't until he commands Pichu to use a Thundershock in front of a small shrub that he realizes he recognizes the feeling his Pokémon has. Sort of. Skepticism? No, simpler than that. Hopelessness. Red thinks back to the last time he felt something similar and realizes it's the way he felt on the field with the Abra, the sense of having a plan that he didn't believe in. An instinct of anticipated failure. It feels almost like something clicks inside him, a shock all its own, at how thinking of that feeling resonates with Pichu. Did he just tap into his Pokémon's instinctive grasp of its own electric abilities? Only one way to find out. Red takes his notebook out and begins writing out how the sensation felt and what triggered it. He has to move to a new section before he finishes, but once he's there, he starts to test it out. Move here. Order an attack. Record the feeling and result. Move there. Order an attack. Record the feeling and result. Red notices in his periphery that the instructor is staring at him as he passes by, but Otto doesn't interrupt, merely calling out another switch. It goes on like that, until Pichu is tired out again, and Red feeds him a full meal and pours some water into a bowl for him. He sits down to take notes about his experience, his nose finally adapting to the smell of ozone in the room as the electric attacks continue to snap through the air around it. With practice, I may be able to tap into Pokemon's understanding of what won't work. The challenge lies in incorporating that information mid-battle, in the time between giving the command and feeling the response, so that he can abort an action that the Pokemon knows won't work. I also can't rely too much on this, since there are plenty of attacks that didn't work that Pichu didn't anticipate. But no attack succeeded once he felt they would not, so at least there are no false positives. A lot of your Pokemon are getting tired, the instructor bellows. The energy they produce, the current, is getting low, meaning more materials will be able to effectively insulate against their attacks unless you use one with higher voltage to overcome it. Now that you have some experience, try to conserve their strength. 2 tries in each room, then rotate to the next one. Starting now. Red lets Pichu rest a bit more for the first room, then only tries 1 attack in each of the following ones, feeling out which attack routes his Pokemon is sure won't work first, trying to feel for some kind of preliminary anticipated failure just from Pichu's positioning. If he trains his Pokemon like this enough, he's sure it'll manifest eventually, but then the question is whether the skill is transferable to a real battle. Red is also impatient to try this out with his other Pokemon. He wonders why he never read anything like this while looking up tips for psychic trainers. But the answer is pretty obvious. If it's a tip that might actually help someone out competitively, they'd want to keep it to themselves. Still, Sabrina should propagate the information, right? Why hasn't he heard something about it before? He needs to ask a psychic he can trust, but for now he's eager to see what else he can find out like this. By the time the class ends, he resolves to try using this in battle tonight. Okay, that's it for today, Otto calls out once everyone has tried out each chamber. Remember how tired your Pokemon are right now. This is in part because you, as their trainers, asked them to attack targets that they couldn't hit. The better you understand these forces, the more efficiently your Pokemon will fight. Study up. Dismissed. Everyone begins to leave their rooms, many of them not withdrawing their Pokemon to let them rest a bit. Otto goes around to converse with a few trainers, and Red brings Metapod back out and sits beside his 2 Pokemon writing in his notebook until Otto approaches, as he suspected he would. Fresh insights, Varus? The instructor asks. Red wonders if every gym member here knows who he is, then feels a touch of surrealism as he remembers that he was on TV for donating dozens of Abra to gyms, so it's not unlikely that every gym member of every gym knows who he is. Yeah, a few. Mind sharing any? Or you got another big heist to pull off on nature first? Red is relieved to see the scarred man smiling and returns it. Can't think of any yet. This is more to do with my psychic powers. I noticed what you were talking about, the instincts of my Pichu knowing when he wouldn't be able to land an attack. A kind of futility. Otto scratches his beard. Interesting cheat, that. You still missed a lot of the attacks, though. Sure you're not imagining it? Yeah, right now it only comes to me as he's attacking. You wouldn't happen to know any electric trainers that are psychic, would you? Outside the gym, even? Some psychics that use electric Pokemon, sure. Ones with a focus in it. Never heard of one. Aren't most into psychic and ghost types? Red sighs and nods. He can understand why, after seeing Sabrina fight. How much more effective would his powers be in battle with his Abra? Still, there are at least a few of them that are partially electric, right? Maybe check in regions with a lot of them. I will, thanks. And let me know if this line of thought pays off, Otto says. Or anyone at the gym. Surge would be interested too, for sure. We've got a pretty firm grasp of what our Pokemon know through trial and error, science, and passed down wisdom, but we don't imagine they can't still teach us something new. The instructor reaches a hand out to stroke Pichu along the back with one finger. To Red's surprise, his Pokemon doesn't flinch away or become wary, possibly because he's so tired. I will. Thanks for the class. Otto nods and moves on to the next student. Red gets back to writing out his ideas for what to test with the other Pokemon, and suddenly remembers the girl Lizzie as a question occurs to him. He looks up and searches the room for her, just in time to spot her heading toward the door. It takes a moment to grab his Pokemon and head out the door, and he catches up to her just outside. Hey! She blinks at him. Hello. How was your lesson? Good. Learned something new about using my psychic abilities. What about you? I've been practicing regulation of voltage output for my Pokemon. This was the first time Marigold has tested it against different materials. Red assumes Marigold is her Flaffy. I was curious about that, from what you said earlier. Mind if I walk with you? Feel free. I believe my schedule put me at a physical training next. Oh, cool. Same here. They walk together out of the building and start across the center field. So you said something just now about altering your Pokemon's voltage as if it's a decision you can make. Earlier I was wondering about how to adjust Pokemon getting tired, but don't stronger attacks just cause the Pokemon to use higher voltage naturally? Not always. Power is voltage times current. Some attacks use more voltage, some use more current, which takes more energy. And it varies by Pokemon. Right. Being able to push the Pokemon's voltage higher would increase power, but also overall efficiency if current output is steady. She shrugs. That's the theory at least. We know it works that way mechanically, but Pokemon are still something of a mystery. Red considers the problem, trying to spot some failure mode as Pichu climbs onto his hat and curls up there. You mean if adjusting their voltage takes something else out of them, they might get tired sooner? Produce less power? Oh, if only. Even if the power output ends up being the same, higher voltage or higher current can both cause different problems, you see? Pokemon follow instinctual limits, but not always optimally so. If we want to find the true limits, we still have to take care not to hurt them in some way while doing so. Huh. Yeah, I can see how that would be hard. Still, the benefits of figuring it out would be big, right? He smiles. It's really cool that you're tackling something that important. She blinks, and her fingers fiddle with the hem of her shirt. Yes. Well, it interests me, you know? I do. Red gives her a curious look. Is it hard, teaching your Pokemon to adjust voltage manually? I'm surprised you're in a beginner class if you've already worked with an electric Pokemon so much. It was hard, but I did it alone, she explains. And I figured it would be good to get the basics as I work up to more advanced classes. I'll be here for a while, so it would be silly not to. And my sister insisted they'd take me more seriously here, if I do. Oh, is she a gym member? X. She's helping run the family business now. Neat. What business? Lizzie adjusts her glasses, the lenses sheening in the sunlight briefly. Power. My last name is Takata. Red blinks. Takata as in Takata Power, Takata. Wow. He frowns. Wait, but why did you have to teach yourself if your family is in the energy business? Oh, my parents aren't trainers, she says. My older sister was the first in the family to go on her journey, against their wishes. They threatened to groom me to take over the business, but I told them I was leaving too, and to find someone outside the family, you know. She shrugs. My sister was passionate about electric Pokemon. She wanted to be a breeder or coordinator. She would still be here at the gym if Dad hadn't died last year. Red's chest aches in sympathy, and it takes a moment for him to respond. I'm sorry. Lizzie nods, and they circle around the obstacle course in silence for a bit. I hope I can help the family anyway, when I finish my research. My sister believes in me enough that she gave me my starting Pokemon. Well, I hope you succeed. Are you planning on joining the gym eventually? Or are you here for a badge? I haven't decided yet. I just wish I could find some trainers to test my ideas with. She glances at him briefly. Red feels embarrassed. I'm sorry, I'd love to help. I understand. You must be very busy. They reach the spot where the other trainers are gathered before class starts. Well, yes, but it's not that. I'm actually leaving town in a couple days. He explains about the cruise convention, and her disappointment takes on a cheerful tone. That's a great reason. Very well, you're excused. Red grins. Thanks, but my friend Blue might be up to help. He's got a Shinx, would probably love to learn what you did. Blue Oak? Work with me? Her hands move to the hem of her shirt again, straightening it. Well, yes, I mean if he agrees, that would be delightful. Well, I'm meeting him and some friends tonight after dinner if you want to join us. Splendid. Thank you. All right, trainers, fall in, their instructor bellows as they approach. Class hasn't officially started yet, which means you early birds get extra training. Aren't you the lucky bunch? 2 laps around the course for warm-up. Bags stay on. Left, right, let's go, people. Remember, your Pokemon can be swapped out, but you cannot. A tired trainer is a dead trainer. Is that going to be you? No, sir, they chorus as they run. Red struggles to keep up as he mentally calms Pichu down, his nap unceremoniously interrupted. You are the central link that holds your team together. Will you be the one to break? No, sir. Prove it with your sweat. Stay in step. Speed it up. You can do it. Let's go. A match is underway as Red enters the battle room that evening, Lizzie trailing right behind him. They stay near the door to watch with the dozen other trainers around the room as the super talkative Elaine battles an older teen named Shigeki. Elaine's Tangela struggles against a burst of icy wind from Shigeki's Piloswine, then swings a pair of vines out to grip it. The Piloswine leaps forward at its trainer's command, and the Tangela has to break off its attack before it can get gored by the icy tusks that form over the Piloswine's ivory ones. Should have taken the hit and started draining it, Red thinks. It takes another few near misses before the Piloswine manages to corner the Tangela with a hit that leaves it too frozen to respond to commands, and the battle ends as Elaine withdraws her Pokemon. Nice job, guys, Blue says from the side as Shigeki brings his Pokemon over to Glenn, who appears to have a triage center set up in the corner of the room for injuries that aren't so intense. They need a Pokemon center. Elaine, remember that your Tangela is a tank. It's not going to be able to do much if you won't let it get hit in exchange for setting up a bind or spreading some powders onto them. I know, she moans, hands gripping her hair. I was just so worried that an ice hit would take her down. Piloswine's physical attacks are so strong, I wanted to try and weaken him first. It was stupid. Tangela can take physical attacks well. I need to. She wanders off, still talking, and Blue notices Red and Lizzie. Yo, Red, glad you could make it. Most of the others turn and yell greetings as Taro and Chie walk onto the arena to square off against each other. Okay, 2 Pokemon each. First blood or knockout. Ready? Start. Red walks over to Blue as the battle starts, only half watching as they summon their Pokemon and begin shouting commands. Hey Blue, Red says, voice low. This is Lizzie. She's looking for others to test out some ideas she has for electric Pokemon combat. I told her you might be interested. Sounds good, he says, and sticks a hand to the side, eyes never leaving the match. Nice to meet you. Let's talk after the match. Charmed, Lizzie says, and takes it without looking as she watches the match with interest. He leaves them to it and goes to Glenn and Shigeki. Hey, Red, Glenn says as he checks the Piloswine over, potion bottle in hand. Sup, Varus? You here to battle? Hey, guys. Yeah, meeting Aiko here. A single battle? Shigeki crosses his arms. Got something new up your sleeve? Red smiles, assuming it doesn't horribly backfire. Nice, Glenn says. I don't think I've seen you do a single battle yet. Why do you focus on doubles so much? Shigeki asks. For wild encounters? That's half of it, Red admits, since I'm not training for badge matches or anything. The other half is that it's kind of a long-term investment. Eventually, my psychic abilities should help a lot with commanding 1 Pokemon at a time. I may not even need audible commands eventually. Glenn nods. But fighting with 2 or more is going to be harder. That's why your command system is built with group battles in mind. Right. They watch the match to its conclusion. Then Red helps take care of the Pokemon, following Glenn's lead and building off what he learned with Aiko. He's careful not to use his powers too often, since he's been using it a lot today, and plans to use it more soon for his battle. But so far, the grief he feels from using it is vague and fleeting, not yet the crushing waves or steady drain of despair. There's a lull as Blue and Lizzie talk, and the others propose various matches between each other. Red takes the time to get in his daily Bayes theorem practice. Someone in a math forum named Macesin taught him an even simpler method using odds ratios, and Red quickly goes through the Tyranitar event math again with it. Prior odds, relative likelihoods, posterior odds, relative likelihoods, posterior odds, prior odds, Posterior odds of R1 are 79.121, prior odds, T1, T2, are 64.36. So the relative likelihoods, R1, T1, T2, are 79, 64, 21, 36. Next, the prior odds are 2.15, so 79, 21, 64, 36x2, 15, 79, 280. So P, T1, R1, 79, 79 plus 280, 22.01%. By the time Aiko shows up, he's back to feeling like he's not quite sure what he's doing, but he gets a similar answer to the original method, so he can't be that far off. Right? Red stands to greet Aiko as she approaches. How's the ranch? We still on for the visit tomorrow? Aiko's grin is radiant as she puts her bag down and prepares for their match. Absolutely. I can't wait for you to see my dad again, Red. He's like a completely different person. Well, not completely. He still spaces out at odd times and has trouble talking about, me being here and stuff. But lately, while they're around, he's more there than he's been in years. That's great. Red withdraws Metapod so it's not confused by any commands, and goes to stand opposite Aiko in the arena. In his last couple battles with Aiko, she's beaten him both times. Her main Pokemon are a little stronger than his, and it takes him a while to piece together her strategies by interpreting her commands. She usually does better near the start of fights, before he manages to land a prediction and take the tempo of the match from her, and catch up in Pokemon knockouts, though not enough to win the match. So just a heads up, I'm going to be using my powers during the battle, so if I act strange in some way, just ignore it. Aiko's eyes widen. Cool. Didn't you throw up last time you tried this? Blue asks from his seat at the edge of the arena. The conversations around the room have quieted as people prepare to watch the match. Aiko winces. Oh, less cool. That shouldn't happen this time, Red says. I know what caused it, and I've been practicing. Glenn gives Red a skeptical look, then starts pulling out some extra equipment from his container box of medical supplies. Maybe you should tell us what strange looks like, so we know if something actually does go wrong. Good point. Red scratches beneath his cap. Basically, I may move oddly or seem spaced out at times, and I may act like I'm hurt, but it's all in my head. Don't worry about me being actually injured unless you see me get hit by something. Aiko frowns. You'll be feeling what the Pokemon do? Some of it, and only some of the time. I don't have any Pokemon with mental attacks, but what about those? If it's all in your head anyway, wouldn't that still count as you experiencing the attack? Yeah, that's one of the risks. I mean, feeling a lot of pain and stress can have mental effects on its own, But I've got to bear them to get better at it. But there's no lasting harm? Glenn asks. Red hesitates, but Blue's the one that answers. Beyond the risk of an attack accidentally going past your Pokemon and hitting you? Much less, Red confirms. Aiko nods and puts a hand over one of the balls at her belt. Good enough for me. Ready when you are. Blue looks between them from the sidelines, hand raised above his head. Ready. He slashes it down. Start. Go, Charmander. Go, Krabby. Their Pokemon materialize across from each other, and Red immediately merges his thoughts with those of Charmander's, feeling the fire lizard's momentary disorientation, then the rapid series of insights that prepares it for battle. The scent of its trainer behind it, the sight of a Pokemon straight ahead and facing it, and the lack of any command to relax, all adding up to Charmander's attention, focusing on the Krabby ahead as an enemy. More than the shared senses, it's that shared rapid orientation that amazes Red. He feels a synchronization within himself and his Pokemon, a shared focus that almost feels like he's both projecting and being projected onto, despite Charmander not being psychic. All this happens within a second, and Red is ready for Aiko's command as soon as she gives it. Wide! Aiko yells. Dodge! Red feels his Pokemon's jolt of adrenaline as its body obeys the command by conditioning. A heartbeat before a wide spray of bubbles are emitted by the Krabby to cover the field. His Pokemon reacts to them faster than Red can intellectually follow, its instincts moving it in just the right way to avoid the pattern it sees in the oncoming attack, which Red only gets the vague understanding of secondhand. Rapid, Aiko says next, and part of Red wants to focus on the command, try and interpret it, and predict what her Pokemon will do next, as he usually does. But it's hard to focus on it and interpret his Pokemon's sensations and thoughts at the same time. Instead, he just lets Charmander continue to dodge on his own, hopping away from each quick clump of bubbles that are sent toward him by instinct. It seems to work at first, but soon there are too many to avoid, and Charmander grazes one. It pops with explosive force, sending him tumbling into another one, the water droplets a cold pain against his dry skin. Red grunts in shared pain, hand clapping over his side where Charmander was hit the worst. "Red, what happened? Are you okay?" "Fine," he yells, and sends his thoughts plunging back into Charmander, who's bouncing back to his feet, pain already fading to a dull ache. "Charmander, hold. Dodge." Aiko knows by now what's coming, but her Krabby isn't fast enough to avoid the smokescreen entirely, as Charmander has started firing 3 of them rapidly by default. One solid hit on its left claw keeps it from being able to see clearly, and Red opens his mouth to give an attack. Then stops. He feels it. Charmander's impulses, barely restrained by his conditioning. Like with Pichu earlier in the day, Red can't actually read Charmander's thoughts, different from his own as they are. But he can feel his Pokemon's felt sense, a tension in its legs, a twitching in its arms, a desire to act. The guides he read talked about the point when the psychic achieves harmony with their Pokemon, and this may not be quite that depth yet, but identifying the sensations he's felt from Pichu. And now Charmander makes Red think of it more as a connection to their instincts, at least. And that's something he can use. Through the surprise and triumph, Red remembers what he'd planned to do next if this worked. Assess the instinctual drive to act, and determine what useful information it provides for his strategy and next commands. But there isn't time for that. The Krabby is still shooting bubbles blindly out, and what he can interpret of the instinct sort of matches what he wants Charmander to do anyway. Red almost doesn't do it. He's worried about what might happen, unsure of giving up control in such a way. But a voice inside that sounds like Blue reminds him of how often he's lost matches from being too cautious, from not committing on an uncertainty. So Red rearranges his mind into a state of acceptance. More, a state of permission, one in which there are no wrong answers, nothing that's not allowed, and in response, Charmander attacks with a flurry of embers. The Krabby just barely avoids them, and shoots another trio of bubbles out at Charmander, who dodges and returns fire again, not just faster than Red would have commanded him, but with more precise timing than an oral command would allow. 2 globs of fire land on the Krabby, and its hard chitin is no match for the sudden heat. It begins to scramble around in pain despite its resistance. Aiko withdraws it, leaving the burning oil to fall to the ground and gutter out a moment later, and Red grunts as his Pokemon's forward charge is aborted, confusion flooding his and his Pokemon's heads. The next instinct his Charmander had was hard to understand other than hunger, and Red's imagination supplies him with the mental image of his Pokemon rushing forward and using his sharp claws to pierce and crack open the Krabby's blackened shell so he could eat its cooked innards. Except there's no Krabby around, and Charmander, return. His Pokemon melts into light and returns to his ball. Aiko stops herself from throwing her next ball out, staggering forward a step at the abrupt switch in momentum. The smoke is slower to fade than the fire, still spreading out from the globs on the floor, and Blue goes to turn on the overhead fan so the room begins to clear. "You all right?" Aiko asks. "Yeah, just give me a sec." Red takes stock physically and mentally. He feels okay mostly. The memory of Charmander's pain is dull, but the connected senses and echoed impulses is still sharp. Red wipes a hand across his face, feeling a cold sweat there. No tears, thankfully. The grief is still mute, but he's shaken all the same. That moment when he projected to Charmander the permission to follow his instincts allowed him to tap into something powerful, but dangerous. He can't remember reading anything about that in the articles and guides by other psychic trainers. Why wouldn't they warn people about this? Maybe because it's dangerous, part of him says. That's what happens when you let go of caution. Or maybe because they didn't do what I did, another part responds. That projection allowed Charmander to forget his conditioning, at least some of it. Does that only happen if there are specific instincts being triggered? Red? His head jerks up. "Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry, just making sure I understand what I just did. What did you just do? Aiko asks. Charmander never reacted that quick in our last battles. It was something instinctual for both of us. I think it might have been specific to the Krabby, though, which is weird, since I didn't think Charmander and Krabby interacted much in nature. Red takes his Pokédex out and checks for areas where they share habitat. The Pokédex highlights the CVI Islands to the south of Kanto, where Charmander have been found raised in caves not far from the shore. Huh, guess they do. Still, it might be a generic response. You should try it with a Pokémon that Charmander would never encounter naturally, Aiko says, tapping her lip. I don't think I have any we can be sure of that qualify, though. Maybe Eevee, just because they're so rare? Right. Red summons Charmander, who looks like he's still in battle mode when Aiko brings her shiny Eevee out. Red quickly merges minds with his Pokémon and feels Charmander's general combat readiness. Nothing yet, he says, eyes closed in concentration. Might need them to fight to know for sure, Aiko says. Just go easy on her, though. She's still new to battling. Right, Blue says, and raises his hand. And start. Test. Fast. Both Pokémon leap to obey the similar commands. Red's more geared toward using safe attacks that test for weaknesses or vulnerabilities, while Aiko's is a directive to move quickly and only strike if it can be done quickly and without compromising movement. As a result, Charmander tosses a couple embers out while Eevee dashes back and forth in a zigzag, then begins circling the fire lizard, who turns in place and rapidly backs up to maintain distance as the silver fox closes in. Within their combined felt sense, Red once again notes the instinctual desire warring with the command he gave, similar to Pichu's anticipated failure, though not as strong, more of a frustration than anything. There's no hunger this time, nothing that gives Red an idea of what Charmander would do if let off his leash. But as Eevee manages to leap around an ember and get a strike in, Red knows suddenly that his command is holding his Pokémon back, keeping Charmander from taking tactically superior actions moment to moment, even if it lets him plan for a stronger overall strategy. Red staggered to the side from the pain of the impact, but he quickly rights himself as his Pokémon does. Aiko, he says, voice rough as Eevee circles around for another attack, and he feels the tension in Charmander rising. I'm going to try it again. Be ready. Do it. Red breathes deep and relaxes, letting the words echo in him and the sentiment propagate outward. Do it. The tension in Charmander snaps, and he leaps forward and up, powerful legs kicking him into a flip. The flame on the end of his tail burning a circle through the air and whipping Eevee in the rear as it dashes beneath. The thrill of savage triumph is so strong that Red doesn't manage to catch what happens next in time. Charmander no sooner lands than spins around and sends an ember out at the Pokémon from point-blank range. Dodge! Only to miss as Eevee thankfully leaps aside at her trainer's command, avoiding a nasty burn and giving Red a chance to yell, "Stop!" Charmander immediately halts its motions, and Eevee does the same after Aiko commands her to. The room is silent for a moment, but for the sound of the two Pokemon's breathing, Eevee's a little pained, and then Blue yells, "Match!" He's on his feet, grinning. Woo! Okay! So that was A flash of light makes them all recoil, and Red feels a fierce grin stretch his lips even as he covers his eyes. The two Pokemon are really close. It's hard to tell definitively where the light is coming from. But he knows. He felt it in that shared surge of triumph. When the light fades, Charmeleon stands tall and proud where Charmander was. With scales of dark red, a sharp profile, sharper claws, and a tail flame that seems twice as bright, the fire lizard lets loose a high-pitched roar that causes its flame to blaze briefly. Nice, Glenn says, and the spell is broken, everyone offering their own congratulations at once. Red's smile fades as he notices Aiko rushing forward to heal her Eevee. Sorry, Aiko, Red says as a twist of wretchedness goes through him. Is it bad? No, she's okay, Aiko says after a moment of inspecting the wound and spraying it. She withdraws Eevee and smiles. Good match. That attack was really unexpected. Unexpected for both of us. Thanks. Red goes to meet his metamorphed Pokemon, reaching tentatively out with one hand as he reaches out with his mind as well. It takes effort to process the two streams of data simultaneously, the hotter, tougher hide under his palm, and the hungrier, sharper thoughts engulfing his mind. Red quickly brings some food out of his pouch and offers it to his Pokemon, who sniffs at it as Red rubs around the spur of bone growing back from the front of his skull. "Eat up, Charmeleon. You deserve it." Red drops the food to the floor. Charmeleon lets out a scraw that shows off its newly sharpened teeth and throws a small glob of flame at it, letting it cook the food before he chows down. Aiko, meanwhile, is watching them speculatively. She seems to come to a decision by the time Charmeleon finishes eating. "Glenn," Aiko says, "get in here." "Boo," Glenn says. Red blinks. "Should I?" "Oh no, you stay," she says with a sharp grin. "Glenn and I need to work on our teamwork, and you need 2 opponents. The only thing I have to beat that," she jerks her chin at Charmeleon, "is my Sandslash, and even with your new psychic bond thing, that wouldn't be a fair fight one-on-one. Or do you want to try it?" Red considers it, but shakes his head. "No, it's too dangerous, both ways." Aiko crosses her arms. "Both ways? You really think he could win?" She sounds both skeptical and impressed. "Not sure, but I only ever practiced with him as a Charmander. For all I know, Charmeleon's thoughts and instincts will respond differently to even basic commands, let alone psychic ones. I'd rather practice with him first." Red gives his Pokemon one last rub, then withdraws him. "Let's do doubles." "Wait," Chie says. "I'm still not sure what actually happened there. Why was Charmander acting differently?" "What did it feel like?" her brother asks. "I'm also curious," Lizzie says from beside Blue. "Is it related to what you did in class earlier today?" Everyone starts asking questions at once, until Blue raises his hands, quieting the babble down. "Red, be careful what you reveal here. You might be giving up a powerful edge, even if not everyone can reproduce it themselves." Blue folds his arms. "No one will think less of you for keeping it secret." Lizzie looks like she might respond to that, but instead stares off with a thoughtful expression. Red looks at everyone as they watch him, and for a moment, surely no more than a breath, he feels the urge to stay quiet. To keep the secret to himself, at least for a little while longer, to use it as a secret weapon to win the upcoming matches. No. Down that road lies madness. He's a researcher, not a battle trainer. He's getting too caught up in these battles if he's seriously thinking that winning them is what's important. It's fun, but it doesn't matter. Learning matters. "Okay, so here's what I've been up to lately." Red starts to explain, and everyone listens attentively as he describes the psychic connection he began learning to feel, how he explored it, and his ideas for tapping into it during training and combat. He's too caught up in the moment, trying to describe things he doesn't quite have words for yet, to realize how he starts to pace, how animated he becomes, how he mimics some of the mannerisms of the various teachers he's had at the gym. He's too busy recognizing how the work of finding those words solidifies the concepts, rough and crude as they are, and only notices in the moment that he wishes he had an easel and poster board to write the ideas out. Give them more structure, connect words and ideas so they can be processed together. It isn't until after the questions are over, and his battle with Glenn and Aiko is about to begin, that he realizes how much better he could explain it if he tried again from scratch, and thinks, and teaching. That matters too. A stray thought that feels like the completing of a circle and the opening of a new door.
This has been an AI reading of the Pokemon fanfic, Pokemon, The Origin of Species, written by Daystar Eld. If you enjoy this work, please visit patreon.com/daystareld, where you can support the author. Additionally, if you enjoyed this podcast and wish to help support the creation of others like it, you can visit patreon.com/askwhocastsai, where we are releasing episodes 4 weeks in advance of the regular feed. Thanks for listening.